See, what had happened at first was...
Hey you all, my name is Ali, your favorite commentator, your future favorite commentator if you aren't following or subscribed to me. I want to talk about fandom culture really quickly, specifically, fan bases, engaging, so on and so forth. The example of fandom culture or of a fandom fan base I will be using today is the Love Island fan base, specifically more so referencing the Nick Alandria fan base. Let's jump right into it. So we know, like the last several months, if honestly, since the show was airing, since Love Island USA season 7 was airing at the time, which was in June and halfway through July, we know that seeing and watching the show, people kind of picked their favorite castmate, right? They kind of picked their favorite islander, so on and so forth. It's very common, right? Nick Alandria, well, specifically Alandria was my day one. Nick kind of followed through with that as I got to know his personality a little bit more, so on and so forth, right? And then obviously, post Villa, a lot's been happening, right? I mean, Alandria's been getting a lot of hate about the whole Taylor situation, how she responded, getting a lot of hate for even being with Nick. Vice versa for Nick. Nick's getting a lot of hate for a whole Sierra situation and getting a lot of hate for being with Alandria, so on and so forth, right? Including other castmates, Shirley's getting a lot of hate, Ace is getting a lot of hate, a few other castmates are getting a lot of hate, Huda, so on and so forth, right? But once again, focusing on Nick Alandria, right? We can admit that the whole fan wars is something that is going to be happening within fandom. Me being in fandom spaces in general, since I was like 12, 13 years old, I'm very true to this. I am not new to this. So hopefully you can hear what I am going to say. Of course, there has been an increase of stan wars. I would say it's kind of worsened since pretty much late August. Ever since Ace dropped his interview about, at the time, having an issue with Nick, supposedly they're cool now, and the whole insinuation of Nick and Alandria not being a real couple. Ever since that, it's just gone worse with the whole betrayal, whole aspect of comparing both women, and then obviously fighting amongst fans and such. It's just gone worse from there, and I don't want to dive into the past about that because I've already made videos about how I feel about the entire situation, and I don't think, at least right now, I have not changed my mind. So let's just jump into regulation and balance. So it's very important to have regulation and balance when it comes down to being in any fandom, any culture, right? Specifically when it comes down to the toxicity of fandom culture, the stan wars, the infighting, so on and so forth, right? Being an OG fandom girly, period. I've learned a few things, especially when it comes down to social media being mixed up with it, right? Obviously, there are certain things that you can, in fact, control and regulate within your feed on social media. You can mute keywords. You can block certain keywords. You can block and mute certain people. You can hide people's responses so it doesn't create something that you're not wanting or expecting to see, so on and so forth, right? There's ways of where you can press not interested when you're coming across something, or just simply scroll past or ignore it, right? And there's also a balance. Things that you are willing to engage in, things that you are willing to have a back and forth about, right? Things that you are willing to make a statement about, so on and so forth, right? Certain things that you're willing to not ignore and actually address directly, right? And certain things of which you are willing to ignore and then just pay it dust. This is very, very important when it comes down to fandom culture, right? I know a lot of us within like these spaces, the Nicolandrian spaces, the Oladol spaces and everything, I know we're really quick and feel the need to defend our faves. I get it. I do it often, right? But that regulation, that balance is important. You don't want to be so deep into feeling the need to defend Alandria or defend Nick and Alandria to the point where you're losing yourself, to the point where you are now actively attacking these other people within stan wars and so on and so forth, which unfortunately happens. So it's very easy the slip of the tongue to start talking shit about the other person's fave, so on and so forth. Hate to say it, right? But that's why it's really important to figure out a balance. When are you willing to be messy? When are you willing to be real and serious? When are you willing to simply ignore? right? How do you want that your feed to look like when it comes down to being a part of that fan space, of that fan base, so on and so forth? This is just something that I really think people should think about when engaging with fandoms, with Stan Wars, and so on and so forth. Very important to think about, right? What are you willing to ignore? How are you going to regulate your content? And what are you willing to respond to? Something to think about. Literally, it's Fandom 101. This is the basics of the basics. If you guys want more, definitely let me know. Bye bye.